Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. We're going to pick up where we left off yesterday where the battery died. It was tired of the story being told, right? It just quit. And so we're going to pick up where Betty Broderick has started raiding and rampaging the marital family home. She comes to pick up the kids at her former home where Dan is now living. And she spots a Boston cream pie that's cooling on the kitchen counter, or it's on the kitchen counter. And deducing that Linda has made said Boston cream pie, she proceeds to smear it and wipe it all over Dan's clothes in the closet, all over the bed, and finishes off with taking a nice fat mouthful for herself as she walks out of the room, and she has left it a complete terror. And the background music to this little scene is "You Take My Self-Control." So again, lest you ever miss the point they're trying to drive home to you in these different scenes, they're going to have some background music that's going to make it obvious for the viewer. You know, guys, I sat and thought about my comments about this being campy, and I reviewed it with myself yesterday, and I'm doubling down. This is campy. Guys, this is campy as all get out. What were you guys thinking? Honestly, this is a murder story. But Lord have mercy, y'all have made it campier than all get out. And I want to even maybe show you a little clip to highlight what I'm talking about. And, see if you don't laugh at it. If you know the Broderick story and you know how Betty talks, see if you don't laugh at it. But anyway, so we see Betty has been breaking things. She's been spray painting the walls. She's being a holy terror. And that's one thing when it's community property. It's another thing if there's an order of protection keeping your behind off the premises and you're coming and destroying things because you're going to get into trouble. So we see her breaking things, and right now there's a petition for divorce going on. We talked about the bifurcation. The property is being settled. She is not being seen now as a wife. She's being seen as an adversary. And I don't know now if she maybe wants to kind of take up the mantle and be like, you know what? You want an adversary, I'll be an adversary. Except for she doesn't meet him on an equal playing field, in my opinion. After Linda is escorted by Dan to an out-of-town Broderick family event. So mind you, it's not an event that's can be excused as being office related, or she needs to do a deposition, or we're just eating lunch with a client. She goes with Dan to an out-of-town Broderick event, a party. And so Dan can't deny that he's essentially having a relationship with her. And so Betty asks him, Dan, was I ever imagining it that you were having an affair? Was I ever imagining it? And Dan looks her in the face and says, no, you were right the whole time. And he has this shit-eating grin on his face, and you really just want to smack him. Because at this point, I don't know, we might be 11 months deep into an affair. And I want to say, outside of this series, I don't know if Dan ever truly admitted to Betty that she had been right the whole time. I think that once he was caught, and I like to call it tit in a sling, once his tit was in a sling, that he then said, yeah, you're right. Once he was caught. Or once it was patently obvious that now he's with this girl, so he might as well admit that he liked her beforehand. But I don't think he ever went back and said, yep, you know what, Bets, you were right the whole time, and I'm sorry. Those are the 2 points that the psychologist was trying to make on the stand to make it so that the victim doesn't feel so gaslighted. Dan gives her this shit-eating grin and says, yep, you're right the whole damn time. Not an I'm sorry and all this stuff, and it just makes you dislike Dan. So then we switch to episode 5, and it has scenes of Betty speaking with her friends. Actually, now she's just speaking with her friend. It's a friend, and they're in a diner, okay? Nothing against diners. In fact, I would die for a diner, right? We've eaten here since February. I would die for a diner. Okay, but anyway, sorry. So she's in a diner, she's not at this ritzy La Jolla beach restaurant with the Christmas lights and the linen tablecloths and the big jewelry and la 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 la. No, Now she's in a friggin' diner, you know what I mean? A greasy diner, pigging out in a booth with her mouth open as she's talking, you know, gesticulating, you know, just, oh my God, how the mighty have fallen. And it's funny that the comparison between her old life and now what she's become or becoming. Okay, so now the divorce is granted, and Betty's not even there or represented by counsel. And she doesn't understand how this can happen at all, because she thinks that it's necessary for her to be there. It's necessary for her to sign things. It's necessary for her to agree in some way, shape, or form. And she's not even there. She's not represented by counsel. And she doesn't believe this is legal. But she feels like Dan is getting around things. But really what it is she was dragging her feet and not doing the right things. And of course, then he ends up getting the judgment he wants. She did not play this smart because I don't think she was well, okay? So she must undergo an appropriate program of psychiatric treatment in order to see the kids. This is in the order from the judge. So now think, at this point in time, her family home is gone. Her lifestyle is gone. We're seeing this. She's eating in a diner. She's slumming it, you know. Her husband is gone. Her status is gone, because her status is the proper upper of Dan Broderick, the +2 of Dan Broderick. She doesn't have, I mean, yes, she's a mother and housewife, and I'm not taking anything away from that. But her status is now gone. Her children are gone because she dumped them off at Dan's to make it so that he would take up the slack and understand what it would be like to raise 4 kids. But she didn't think that then he'd go and hire a bunch of staff to help him take care of it. She should have thought that through, but she was angry. And so also her reasonable mind is gone. In my opinion, her reasonable, reasoning, rational mind is gone, all right? So Dan, he's having his assistant transcribe the shitty answering machine messages that Betty is continually leaving on her house phone. And you see that the assistant is almost having PTSD from having to transcribe these messages. Again, it's funny. All right, they make it kind of funny because she sees him coming in after the weekend with the little tape recorder that she's going to have to then put in the recorder and transcribe. And by the way, I used to do that, so I know exactly what that's all about. Not shitty messages, and it's like to see that, and she's just cringing. And then finally, she's like, "I don't want to do this. You don't understand what kind of crap's on these messages." She's like, "It's real important, Susie. That's the kind of thing." Like he doesn't give. The Dan in this series doesn't give a shit about how crappy it is to have to transcribe hours of Betty ranting on these answering machines with all her foul language that would make a sailor blush. So anyway, this is where he drops off the machines.
I know. I'm sorry. As soon as you can.
Even just transcribing these, I mean, the language is really, but all of
Just do it, Lois. Just do it. As soon as you can.
Every time you call me.
See, you see what I'm saying? He's kind of a
Seem to matter to you.
dick.
Maybe.
Dan begins fining Betty per transgression. So he decides he's doing these voluntary payments, right? Because they're doing a bifurcation. She doesn't have a court-ordered, this is exactly how much Dan is going to pay you per month, this for the next years, this is how much you're going to get from this. This hasn't happened yet. So it's out in limbo, and Dan is giving her this voluntary $9,000 a month. And she's got big bills. So anyway, Dan begins fining Betty per transgression. He withholds fines out of his voluntary support checks. Because think, they have that bifurcated order. They're divorced, and yet he's holding the purse strings. He's holding them. So anyway, he fines her $100 per obscene word. He fines her $500 if she comes to the house. He fines her $1,000 if she takes the kids without advance notice. And I do believe that truly the fines were a little even more elaborate than this, but to make it easy on the viewer, this is what we're told. So Dan also writes these missives, these letters, explaining the fines would be withheld from the support checks, and then the letter that we see in the series, he just wants to deter her from using this language that she's taken to using. So she's basically doing these nasty rants to spite him because he said don't do it anymore, and she's like, oh, she's gonna triple down on that. Dan tells her not to call Linda the C word. She's gonna call Linda the C word every other breath. Betty begins leaving these messages in earnest, citing her freedom of speech, and it is her primal scream to the world. You know, this is the only thing she has left. He's taken everything from her, and all she has is her voice to say how dissatisfied she is with what they're doing and what she really thinks of them, and she is not going to hold back. If she goes to therapy, because therapy is discussed by a lot of people around her, like, dude, you know what, you need to kind of go to therapy, because they recognize she's very angry. This is patently obvious. This is obvious on its face. And she fears that Dan will subpoena the records if she goes to therapy, and that it will end up working against her. And the background music to all this chaos is Dead or Alive's You Spin Me Right Round. You know what I'm saying? Crazy making. You spin me around, okay? What makes matters worse for Betty is that now Linda's staying at the house, okay, and leaving the recorded messages. So when Betty can't get a hold of one of the kids and they're not picking up the phone, she's hearing Linda's voice on the message. And so Dan sends Betty the bill for her stay in the loony bin as well. I mean, as you do, I guess, you know, it's hers to pay. I'm sure they would have had insurance, but who knows? So it's like poking an angry bear, because Linda is leaving them voicemail messages and Betty is trying to arrange time and speak with her kids, and she's hearing the interloper, you know, voice emanating from her old damn machine. I mean, can you imagine how that makes you feel? I mean, it's like you might as well wear my underwear too while you're at it. What else do you want? What else can I give you? You want my underwear here? I mean, if I was Betty, I would have done that too. Just take them off and flip them onto the table and said, here, she wants that too. Go ahead, take it. I mean, you're taking everything else. It's crude. It's crude and disgusting. But you know what? They're both playing the game. I want to say this. I haven't pointed this out yet. I think they both kind of like it on some sick, primal level. Both Dan and Betty, part of them deep down inside enjoyed battling each other, because that's the only way you get to this point. They both liked poking at each other, and this is the end, is what you get for that kind of behavior. So one month, Dan determined that Betty owed him $1,300 in addition to the amount of her spousal support check. So he would withhold her entire spousal support check, and she would owe him $1,300, because that's how many times she had cursed on his machine or had violated the other restrictions dealing with the children in 1 month. So I think there were 2 months, if I remember correctly, that she got no money, and she allegedly owed Dan money. So, I mean, you got to think, that's what, $8,000 in a mortgage payment that you missed? You would miss? I mean, this adds up when you're playing these, when you're acting like children playing adult games. She confronts him on the way to the Bar Association's Blackstone Ball. Okay, so I want to find that and show it to you. And you know how, like, I'm a new YouTuber, and I'm not tech savvy to know how to pull up cut screens of other people's videos to, like, do reactions and stuff like that. But what I am going to do is show you one of the scenes, and I'm just literally gonna show it to you. So in this scene, Betty is going to Dan's house to confront him, and he ends up it turns out it's the night of the Bar Association's Blackstone Ball, and this is just to show you how funny it is and how she treats him and how he treats her.
Guess I owe you another $250.
Get out of here now.
Or you'll be late for the Blackstone Ball.
Uh-oh, better hurry up and go get your shitty cape and top hat and take the whore to the party I should be going
Just-
to.
Cops.
Oh, I know you will.
They'll arrest you, Betsy.
You'll have me arrested.
You'll go to jail this time.
You'll have me sent to jail. No.
On August 7th, 1986, Mediation begins. And Betty says that she only wants custody of the children if she can get a settlement, because she cannot keep them in the standard which she is living. The standards have completely changed. And she doesn't want to be a single parent of 4 kids, especially on a severely limited allowance. So Dan uses one particularly heinous answering machine message left by Betty in the court, wherein one of the boys picks up the phone that she's leaving a message, and he picks up the phone, and thereby it records the whole entire conversation. I do believe this was a setup conversation. In other words, that the child is like, why, you need to stop using bad words, Mom. And she just is going off about Dan and Linda and calling them every name under the book and telling this young child everything they've ever done wrong in very explicit detail. And she's using the child as a pawn, and I believe both parents use these children as pawns. That's my opinion. The judge just gets so fed up. He's got all these contempt orders that Dan and his attorney keep filing about every single thing that Betty does, and then they're poking her, poking the bear, and then and the judge can't stand it anymore, and he just says, Dan, get the girlfriend off the answering machine, because it's a tool, because he cites it as a communication tool between the mother and the children that now you have custody of. And also he tells him to quit playing around with all this fining, that this is my courtroom, we're not gonna play these games anymore. Betty gets a female attorney, and she's trying to get proper representation, but that attorney hasn't been, doesn't get paid. You just want to have a sit down with Betty, but Betty is not well. Have you ever seen someone who's that angry they're irrational? You just want to say, take that damn $9,000 for 1 month, keep your mouth shut, don't say anything about Dan, don't cross his threshold or do anything that you're not supposed to do for 1 month, take that $9,000 and pay down a damn retainer on an attorney. Give them half 1 month, half another month, and move on. But she doesn't. So Betty's attorney doesn't get paid, and what she does, and Betty's attorney contacts Dan regarding the payment. Now, mind you, this attorney has got to know that there's been like 5 attorneys before her that haven't had the payment. So this attorney takes it upon herself to contact Dan, and they get some scheme together about selling one of Dan's Colorado properties, because all of a sudden Dan's got these investment properties allegedly with his brother, which I'm not even going to go into that, so don't send me a legal cease and desist, okay? But Dan has other properties, and that something about selling this, and then half of this can go pay for this attorney's retainer. But Betts sees this as a betrayal between her and her attorney. And you know what? If you hadn't run that by me first, I think I would have found it as a betrayal too. But it was her attorney trying to stay in the game for her and trying to get paid. Betty decides to represent herself pro se, because, that's what you're going to do. That's what you're going to do if you can't find anybody to represent you, right? But the judge, he is so frustrated with these two. He tells the Dan to get the girlfriend off the answering machine that's used as a communication tool between the mother and the children that you have custody of at the moment. And he tells him to quit playing around with these dang fines. And then he proceeds to go, all these contempt motions that you and your attorney file every other day. I'm putting Betty in jail for 6 days for the various contempt motions that Dan and his team have filed, and that they were even outstanding. So he was just like, I've had it. He actually had her going to jail for a longer time, but then he took some time back after she apologized to the court, but not that much. And it was like, stand up and apologize. You know what I mean? That's what her attorney was making her do, and it was like, you can tell she didn't want to do it. I do want to say something for the record, so put a little note in this. Betty is not a good actress, guy. Betty Broderick, as a human being, isn't a good actress, and I want you to keep this in mind for what I'm going to say when I wrap this whole series up. The evidence all proves that she isn't. She probably has a face like mine. Not a good poker face. You know what she's thinking, and she's not going to be very good at lying. And sometimes she just feels justified in telling you the dang truth. So in my opinion, if Betty says something, more than likely that's what she really thinks. Is it accurate? Maybe not. But Betty's not a very good liar, and she's not a really good poker player. So let's get on to episode 6. Dan finally gets around. He asks Linda Kolkina to marry him. So he gets down on his knee, and I think it's in a bar. Maybe it's an Irish bar. I don't recall. But he gets down on his knee, and she says yes. And so now we know what's going to happen. They're going to get married, and Betty is going to go crazy. A reporter who's covering the local trials, and he's taking notes on the Broderick case. This is typical. You'll have people that'll kind of skulk around the courthouses and pop in and out of different courtrooms and see what's going on and get the temperature, and see, what's interesting and stuff. And so he sees this Broderick versus Broderick and what a hot mess it is, and he approaches Betty and he basically tells her case is really intense. He hasn't seen that much of a hot mess in a long time, and so he suggests to her that sometimes a problem just needs a little daylight. In other words, let's throw some sunshine on this case. You're representing yourself pro se now, implying that it would be advantageous for Betty to air this out in the court of public opinion a little bit. Let's see what the public has to say, because honestly, look at you. Your attorney, your husband's an attorney. He's also represented by attorney, and here you are, a housewife, representing yourself pro se. And so he gets her to give some statements. He obviously attends the trials. He gets an opinion piece, I think, going, and he asks for Dan's take on it, and the paper then backs off because the story was allegedly killed when Dan allegedly threatened to sue over invasion of privacy. So Dan had the story killed. Now, mind you, I believe that story came out in full after the murders, because you know what? They're never going to let a good story go to waste once there's something, Dan can't sue you once he's dead, and so they printed it after the fact, years after the fact. So Betty at this point starts to get anonymous mail, articles of Dan and Linda out at different functions, that have appeared in like the paper, like the bar association paper or whatever, and with Linda and "eat your heart out, bitch" is like scrawled over the bottom of it. And Betty, of course, believes that Linda has mailed these poison missives to her. And the other people that Betty complains to, many of them believe that Betty might have even mailed them to herself, because they claim that Linda acts at a reserve when Linda's being catty or petty. That's their idea. As on some of these documents that Betty would get, Linda would act as the notary. Like, could you imagine, say, getting your damn divorce document and it has your husband's mistress as the notary? Wouldn't you be like beyond angry? Like that kind of stuff, that she acts at a reserve, like plausible deniability. And they just didn't think that Linda had it in her to be so aggressive to Betty as to send her a weight loss ad, with some nasty, like, "lose weight, you fat bee," that kind of stuff. They didn't think that Linda had it in her to really poke that bear, but who's to know? So Betty tells her friends that she will know that Dan has gone completely around the twist if he's lost his mind if Linda shows up to her daughter's graduation. Like, surely he wouldn't do that. That she wouldn't have the nerve to do it either. But guess what? Linda does show up to the daughter's graduation, and Betty takes pictures of Linda. Like, she gets a hold of a camera, and then she goes around snapping pictures of Linda, like following her around, freaking her completely out. I think Betty just did things to get under people's skin at this point, because she didn't have that much else she could do. And also, while Betty was in jail for those contempt hearings, where she was given like 6 days, I believe it was, she spots a flyer for this group called HALT, Help Abolish Legal Tyranny, and she ends up developing a good amount of friendships from this group, because she felt terrorized by the legal system at this point, and so then she started kind of being an advocate. So she did get some support from this HALT group, and Broderick versus Broderick now proceeds with Betty representing herself pro se. Dan has an attorney. Betty didn't have any cash for a retainer, and she struggles to represent herself as she has no courtroom experience or knowledge. All she knows is the kind of stuff Dan's jabbered about, you know, this time that he went through law school and stuff like that, but she was too busy raising the kids and having kids. So she's smart, but she's also really stubborn, you know, and I think Betty could have gone to law school and kicked his ass. She really was a smart woman, but that wasn't, you know, the thing she liked. She wanted to be a wife. She wanted to be a wife and mother and housewife. So anyway, she manages to uncover, even through all her stumbling and fumbling around and getting things objected to, she manages to uncover that Dan has valued his practice at less than what he makes in a single year. Because remember, he had the right when he asked for those different asks and Betty didn't show up to court and he got all those things he wanted. He also got the right to value all their marital assets. And basically, he has the right to value his practice through his accountant. And he grosses over $100,000 a month, according to the series. And he was only giving her $9K voluntarily. So while you might squeal very loudly of all the things you could do with in your life with $9K, me too, he grossed $100,000. So think that was only 9% of that? Come on. He was voluntarily giving her $9K. So according to this show, Dan claims Betty's support before he was working was non-existent. So he goes back and tries this revisionist history crap. Like that she was simply a housewife, that she didn't work all through most of his schooling. You know, granted, he took out loans and things like that for his some of his education. But their spending money, all that came from her working little jobs, doing teaching jobs, Tupperware, whatever it was to make the ends meet. So he tries to engage in some revisionist history that she really didn't do much of anything. And he kept calling it babysitting money, like she was some 12-year-old. Honestly. So he downplays Betty's contribution to the marriage. Again, gaslighting. Outside of her home care, he would cop to the fact that, yeah, she did put on a beautiful, you know, she presented a beautiful home and turned out beautiful children. But other than that, you know, he has to begrudgingly admits that she made money in between pregnancies, in between their 9 damn pregnancies. So anyway, the courtroom ends up being closed. In other words, the records were sealed because allegedly she was pressured by the counsel and the judge that it would be better for the children to do so. So the thought of having the reporter there with her and having these hearings not closed and giving more sunlight to it ended because they kind of, in the series it shows the judge and kind of putting pressure on like, well, you could ask for it to be open and it would look kind of like you didn't care about your children's, you know, if they got a hold of this later, but then it might not be good for your standing, you know, for the point you're trying to make. So, you know, and he makes her feel bad. And so she's like, close it. So the courtroom records are sealed and the rumors spread. This is so bad. If this is true and this happened, I could see another reason that Betty lost it. Okay. The rumor spread that the reason why the courtroom was sealed in Broderick v. Broderick was because that Betty was a child molester. Betty was never a child molester. There was never any evidence that Betty was a child molester. But I'm guessing, if I had to guess, speculation, that someone said, why in the world are the records sealed? And someone probably said, well, you know, they do that kind of stuff for child molesters. And then that probably just took off like wildfire, that Betty was a child molester. And when that got back to her, that total fabrication that served to unsettle people, her friends and all this stuff, she just lost it. How in the world could you let a rumor like that fly? And I'm not saying Dan spread it. Who knows who spread it? But can you believe that? A child molester. What? Regarding the $9K a month voluntary support, Dan's side was allegedly arguing, quote, now listen to this, it's good for Mrs. Broderick to limit her settlement, essentially because she's a spendthrift. I'm doing you a favor because you spend too much money. You know what? If I want to take every penny I make or that's mine, and I want to lay in it in a bed and spend it like, rolling it and put it in a bathtub and roll in it and burn it, it's my money. It's not your business if I want to be a spendthrift or not. But you just want to be like, it's better for Mr. Broderick to have it because Mrs. Broderick is a spendthrift, So there's a real poignant moment towards the end of the episode where Betty's talking to the judge and she's doing her best pro se. Bless her heart, she doesn't know any of the rules of court. And she says to the judge, everyone wants a kitten and nobody wants a cat. And it is sad. Like, that part got me. It was like, girl, you got me. Because he's like trying to say, Betty's smart. She can move on with her life. Look at all the shit she can do. Look at how well she's done here in the courtroom. And she doesn't know anything about anything. She doesn't know court rules. She doesn't know civil procedure. She doesn't know criminal procedure. She doesn't know shit. And here she is doing a pretty good job knocking down a few pegs and finding out a few things. But, and she's like, well, I hope I can get a job. But everybody wants a kitten and nobody wants a cat. And she looks so beaten down. So let's go on to episode 7. Oh, I'm not going to go too long at episode 7. I'm going to try to truncate this a little bit. Linda is deciding on her honeymoon destinations, and she's sitting around with her girlfriends and making plans, and they're mocking Betty's answering machine messages and having a good old time drinking wine and talking about Betty. And we also see Dan, I think he's teaching the Bar Association, because then I think he also goes on to become the Bar Association's president. So we see him teaching, and he's talking about how successful trial lawyers define what the truth is. So what Betty does is she sneaks into Dan's house, and she steals Linda's wedding invitation list. And I think it had everything, like the person's name, their phone number, all this stuff. And what Betty does is she proceeds to call all the invitees and have conversations with them. So in retaliation, because Linda's not acting out of reserve like Betty's friends were always trying to say, Linda goes and gets into Betty's house and steals Betty's diary. Campy! The housekeeper sees Linda in Betty's house, doesn't know it's Linda, but knows it's not one of Betty's daughters, okay? And so Betty's missing her diary and puts 2 and 2 together. So they end up going to court, and they're both arguing, Dan's arguing that Betty has broken in and stolen the wedding list, and Betty tries to deny it. Now, granted, Betty will lie, but she's not a good liar. And so the judge decides to just go ahead and sanction her, saying that Dan doesn't have to pay these voluntary support payments until the wedding list is returned. So Betty just gets up and returns the list. And then Betty goes out and buys a gun. So, this is not funny anymore, and it's starting to get real serious. Betty also finds out that Dan plans to go on the kind of honeymoon that she wanted to go on or did go on, and that Dan also plans to wear that fancy morning jacket that the mom had tripped out that he wouldn't wear during her wedding. Now he's going to wear it for Linda's wedding, and that was just another insult to the injuries. So knowing that Linda had stolen her diary, which Dan makes Linda return, by the way, Betty is imagining as she lays down at night that they have read her diary and they're like mocking all the entries, and Betty just lets it out in her diary. It's a nasty diary. She'll talk about all her problems, and she just feels very violated. And so people start expressing concern to Dan that Betty's going to disrupt his wedding, and that that he might come to harm. And so Dan hires security, and Betty doesn't invade his wedding, by the way. So this whole episode's pretty much about that. And she ends up being minded by one of her friends, actually 2, but one is on scene. And she's minded all day long the day of the wedding. They sit down with her and she walks down memory lane all day, and they end up dancing and listening to mixtapes and stuff. So she's minded the whole entire day to ensure that she doesn't go over there and crash Dan's wedding. Dan, I think part of the problem with him and part of the reason that this ended the way it did is that he was very arrogant, and he didn't think that Betty would ever, quote unquote, kill the golden goose. He saw himself as a golden goose to her, and that Betty would never kill the golden goose. And I think he underestimated Betty. In fact, I know he did. He underestimated her anger. He knew she was angry, but I think at some point he just didn't think she would ever do that. So at this point, Betty has purchased a gun. Her sons have seen the gun. The sons have told Dad that she's got a gun. Dad, again, is too arrogant to think that she'll kill the golden goose, being him. Betty ends up stealing her daughter's key to Dan's house and decides to go over to his house in the early morning hours after receiving another letter from one of his attorneys about the case. And she wants to confront Dan. She wants to talk to him, allegedly, face to face, and him not be able to get her off the property. So in her mind, if she brings the gun, she can make him listen to her. This is her explanation to herself. This is her excuse, all right? And it is an excuse because, in my opinion, she had intent to kill him. That's my opinion. I think that she was enraged. She had snapped, and that she felt overwhelmed and felt this was the only way to end it. I think it was wrong, but I think that that's where she was at. So episode 8 is the murder trial. It starts on October 23rd, 1990, and it charges Betty with 2 counts of first-degree murder of Daniel Broderick and Linda Cocaina Broderick. See, what happened is Betty skulked into their house in the very early morning hours. Dan and Linda had been out on a boat that day, and, they got in sea and sun, and they were in their bed that night, probably pretty tuckered out, and she snuck in there, got into his house. I think she tried to use the key on one door, didn't work, and she used the key on another door and got in there, walked up the front stairs. The bedroom door faced the stairs, but she went in through another room. I think it was a sitting room, had an adjoining bathroom that then adjoined to the bedroom, and she walked in through there. And she shot and killed Linda and then Dan. Okay, so this is what happened. On episode 8, we have prosecutor Carrie Wells cross-examining Betty in the first trial. And Betty's saying things like, I don't remember. I was overwhelmed. I wanted him to be involved. She wanted to talk to him. The reason she brought the gun there was she wanted to make him hear her out, and if he wouldn't hear her out, she was going to blow her brains out right there on his property. She was filled with rage and confusion, and she wanted to make him talk to her, okay? And Carrie Wells, for the state, is trying to bring up premeditation. She's trying to prove that Betty went over there with the intent to kill Dan and Linda. She didn't go over there under the heat of passion, just really wanting to talk. The gun just happened to be on her, and they scared her, spooked her, whatever, and Betty just reacted without thinking, like a heat of passion. She's going to try to knock this down. So she points out that by December of 1986, that the fining system that Dan had initiated had already stopped. And Carrie Wells was trying to show that, that letter that Betty had gotten that day couldn't have, bothered her so much, and that, if even back then, if Dan really wanted to be a jerk, he didn't have to pay you anything, right? And then Betty's like, right. And she starts basically trying to prove that Betty is not being truthful, that Betty had premeditated this crime, that she had brought the gun, that she had stolen the keys to the house, and that she went over there with an idea of either just killing them straight out or talking to them, and if she didn't get her way, killing them, not killing herself. That was her point. And she brought up all kinds of things, like trying to bring up the fact of how many times she'd said she would kill Dan. But Betty challenges that, it was just said in jest, or that she'd said it to him so many times, it didn't mean anything. She didn't mean it. It was like, if you don't stop doing that, I'm going to kick your ass. I'm going to kill you, Betty brings up things that, how she'd been aghast at his lying for so long, and that finding out Linda had been in her house, and just all these insults. And Carrie Wells brings to Betty's attention that, the reason she even lost most of her friends was because the only thing she would talk about was Dan Broderick, that she was obsessed with Dan Broderick. And Betty agrees. She quit all the things that she belonged to because Dan leaving her ruined everything. She couldn't hang out with her friends anymore. Everything, her whole life changed. So we see in the series, Betty's getting all these supportive letters in prison from people in the outside world sympathizing with her. Sending her commissary, sending her socks, sending her a needlepoint and all kinds and all the like. And so the state in the first trial is arguing premeditation, and that it can happen in the blink of an eye. There's no set amount of time that you have to have thought about it. You could literally think about it for a blink of an eye, a second. If you thought about it, you brought the gun, you thought, damn it, I'm going to kill him, and you pull the trigger, that's premeditation. And so Jack Early, the defense attorney, was arguing that she was acting under heat of passion, that she was being emotional, that she didn't go over there to kill them, that she went over there just to talk to them, and the gun was just something to secure their attention, right? And that at worst she was going to kill herself there. But she was feeling emotions, and she didn't even have the right mind to make any kind of decision to premeditate. And Carrie, of course, Wells argues that those things aren't mutually exclusive. You could have feelings and you could still then premeditate. So the first trial, after hearing so many crappy things about Dan, all right, and Betty taking the stand in her own defense, talking about all the stuff in detail, the first jury felt for Betty. They really did. One juror even said that every human has a breaking point, and added, what took her so long? In other words, he wondered, what took her so long to kill Dan? I mean, if that's not something. So, of course, Betty's jubilant in the hung jury because they have to try her again. And if they didn't opt to try her again, that was it, right? Of course they're going to opt to try her again. In one really funny sequence. No one can argue that this one isn't funny. Betty calls the friends from jail. And she's talking like, I escaped from jail. Can you please come and get me? Bring sunglasses and a hat, And at the very end, she's like, April Fools. But it is so freaking funny because she's calling somebody's friends. Acting like, this happened and I'm just outside the wall and I don't know how it happened, but come on, please, come, come get me, come on. She's got a wicked sense of humor, a very dry and wicked sense of humor. You can't take that away from her. To go without saying, she's quite buoyant and gleeful that she got the hung jury, and assumes when she finds out they're of course going to try her again, she feels very confident that she'll also get off the second time. But Jack Early knows better. He knows Carrie Wells too, and he knows that she's a bulldog, and that any mistake she made in the first trial, she's not going to make in the second trial. She didn't go deep enough into the scene in the bedroom, bringing out Betty's inconsistencies. And if Betty chooses to take the stand in the second trial, she's wide open to have those inconsistencies revealed. So he tells Betty, her defense attorney, tells her, you have got to study, you have got to know your testimony inside and out, because Carrie Wells is going to get in there and she's going to reveal any inconsistencies. You've got to be careful. And Betty is shown as being quite cocky. I know how to tell my story, Jack. She's getting calls with, doing People magazine interviews and the like, and she's feeling quite buoyed, and she wants bail, and she's funny. She truly is funny. She talks about how Jack is like, Betty, I can't get you bail. And she's like, Jeffrey Dahmer got bail. And he's like, it was $1 million bail. And she stops and thinks. She takes a beat and she goes, maybe I should have eaten them. Because maybe then I could have gotten bail. And he looks at her like, what the fuck? And she goes, she's funny. I mean, it's dark humor, but it's funny, so she doesn't get bail, by the way. So at the second trial, Carrie Wells hits home that the motive for Betty Broderick is hate, jealousy, and that she was a woman scorned, and that the hate became her life, and that she is still filled with the hate. And you know what, Carrie? I think you're right. I think you got it right. At the second trial, Betty's friends take the stand and tell the court that Betty commonly disparaged Dan, that she was materialistic, that she always said she'd kill Dan, but more than likely that was said in jest until things got to be very crazy. But, it was like, I'll shoot his balls off, that kind of stuff. I mean, take that for what you will. No one ever came and said, Betty called me and said, I'm getting ready to kill Dan. It wasn't in present. It was like, I could kill him. I'm so mad I could kill him. But she had said that kind of stuff even to her friends. So that gets elicited at trial. And Carrie Wells also brings up that old marriage encounter and the workbook and the letters and the promises that Dan had made and the promises that Dan had broken. And she elicits from Betty that she'd even read the marriage encounter letter and workbook before she killed Dan. And she asks Betty if she killed Dan on the anniversary of the marriage encounter. And Betty was a little rattled by that. Again, she wasn't, some of these questions she wasn't expecting from Carrie. And whenever Carrie asked her why in the world she took a gun to Dan and Linda's house that morning, if she just was intent on talking to them, Betty said, I took the gun with me because I wanted to make him listen to me. And Carrie Wells challenges her. She challenges Betty's assertion that she had planned to kill herself in front of Dan and Linda if Dan wouldn't listen. And Betty keeps saying, when she's describing how this whole thing went down, Betty talks about, she admits she goes in the house, she gets in the house and she walks up the stairs and she goes in the bedroom. The bedroom was really dark because they had curtains and it was still early morning, and that she walked into the room and that when Betty moved, they moved, and that the gun went off. Like she tensed and the gun went off. Different times she had said that maybe Linda said, call the police or something like that, and that Betty just tensed and the gun went off. And that she didn't even remember pulling the trigger. This was a common thing. I didn't even remember pulling the trigger. And so Carrie Wells goes ahead and pulls out the inconsistency. She's saying, you tensed once, like you went in the room and they said, call the police, and you tensed once and shot Linda, right? And then Betty's like, yeah. And she's like, well, so then you tensed twice? She shot Linda twice. And then Betty's like, and she's like, you tensed 4 times? You tensed 5 times? Because it required pulling a trigger. It wasn't an automatic weapon. So you're not tensing accidentally 5 times and hitting 3 of them perfectly. I think one hit a nightstand and another and the door. But all the other bullets were dead on the money. No pun intended. And so that didn't play well. It really didn't play well. It was a turning point, I think. And Carrie Wells also showed that Betty also changed the aim of her trajectory when after shooting Linda, she would have had to change her aim to shoot Dan. Because Betty was trying to claim she went into this room, it was dark, Linda said, call the police, and Betty just freaked out and started shooting involuntarily, right? Without intent, involuntarily. But the thing is how can you shoot in the dark, hit the one person twice, and then hit the other one? And, she had to change aim, so Betty tried to claim that she didn't move to change. She didn't move the gun, but, obviously she did. And then Carrie, it says, you never intended to kill yourself. And then Betty admits, there was no bullets left. Like she still would have but there weren't bullets left. And then she tried to act like she left the room, and the Carrie's like, you didn't really leave that room right after you did it, did you? And then she's like, after you shot them, you didn't immediately leave the room, did you? And then she gets Betty to admit that what Betty did was she yanked the phone from the wall and took it with her because Dan made a movement, allegedly maybe to reach for the telephone to call for help. And Betty removed the phone after shooting the couple, yanked it out of the wall, wrapped it up, and threw it at the stairs after she marched out the bedroom door because she didn't want them to be able to call for help. I mean, that's pretty damn cold-blooded and premeditated. If you do something accidental and you have a reaction, you're not going to then go and cold-bloodedly then proceed to make sure they can't help themselves. So she did herself no favors on the stand in the second trial. She goes to a phone booth after the murders, and she makes many phone calls. I mean, she must have called the whole damn town. She called all her friends. I think she called her kids. I think she might have called her father or something. She called everybody. And Betty didn't express remorse after. She didn't. I mean, that's another thing. And Carrie Wells elicits from her also that she found herself more peaceful in jail. Like she chose the road of peace, and that Betty then says, yeah, it was more peaceful for her being in jail. Like she had been under so much torment of this legal torment and the stuff that was going on that she felt after this whole thing was over that she was more peaceful. But I guess if the rage of a volcano blows and the objects of your rage are now incinerated, maybe you would feel more peaceful. So Jack Early then goes to sum it up, and he argues voluntary manslaughter, heat of passion, no premeditation, and Carrie Wells argues premeditation and intent. And guess what? The jury found Betty Broderick guilty in the second degree, so not the first degree, but the second degree for both Dan and Linda. And the judge ordered 15 years to life per charge. So that's, and also to be served consecutively. That means one after the other. So essentially 30 years. So the jury, after they came out, a few of them allegedly gave interviews, and one was going to be a holdout and not even give second degree for Dan and Linda. But they all sat around allegedly and sat and held hands, and they listened to that voice recording, that answering machine recording with Betty talking to the son. And for some reason, I guess the hate and the vitriol and the anger and that phone call and the way that she came off made them, it was the tipping point for her to realize, yeah, second degree murder is accurate. But she didn't know that the charge carried a possible sentence of 15 years per each count. So, you know, then they have I don't know if they've taken license with this, but they had the juror expressing shock that because she thought she was doing Betty a favor, like she'd be out in a couple of years. She was surprised that Betty could do 30 years, right? So this series ends with Betty Broderick in jail. I think it's talking to a reporter, and she decides to talk a little bit about her past, and she talks about her and Dan's favorite song is the 12th of Never, and she decides to do an a cappella rendition of the song. Yeah, okay. Just to wrap up, I just wanted to say that I found this entertaining, this USA Network reboot. It was entertaining. Was it necessary? Was it something we just needed? Not necessarily, because the Betty Broderick story done by Meredith Baxter, it can't be topped. So, you know, if you want the facts and you want accurate portrayals, and I mean that had everything. But this is worthwhile. It's interesting. About the real folks that are behind this, I think that the second jury got it right. I think that Betty was rightfully convicted of second degree murder for both Dan and Linda. I believe she went over there with the premeditated intent to harm them. I don't think that she ever intended to kill herself. I think that she has had a real hard time expressing remorse even to this day. She had a parole hearing, I believe it was last year or the year before, and that was like the first time since in all this time that she even said sorry. She said, "I feel bad for killing two wonderful people." That's paraphrased. And that's like the only time she said anything about positive about Linda, that's for sure. And, you know, she just said, "I'm sorry." And the kids were there, and Dan's family were there, and Linda's family were there. And they were expressing how, you know, this is the first time they're getting essentially remorse from her, but it really was just pretty flat affected saying that she had remorse. See, Betty's not a good liar. You know, she's not a good actress. She has gone allegedly 30 years without saying she was sorry. I mean, like in a real, in my opinion, meaningful way, because she felt that she was pushed to it. So she felt what she did was right. She really truly believed that they pushed her to this, that this was, that they, I wouldn't say they deserved it, but this is what they got coming because of what they kept doing, and that this was the logical outcome because of what they kept doing. And then once she got into that bedroom, it was just a reaction that they had set up all the cards to make it happen. Like in her mind, that's how she really felt.